The idea came from me, from my dad having horses in training, and with initially a trainer called Paddy Chesmore in Drimmen, and soon after my dad had a horse there, Paddy died and Sue took over the licence, and I used to go racing with Sue Chesmore driving, my dad in the passenger seat, me in the back, thinking I'd rather have her job and get paid for this than his job and pay for it. And that's from about the age of 13 or 14. I thought I want to be a trainer.
He told me that right from the word go, that's what he wanted to do. And I've always wanted to work with horses, and I thought, well, that's perfect. But I knew nothing about racing, nothing whatsoever. Never put a bet on, my parents never watched it on telly, so it was a completely new thing.
I didn't know what to do, and I literally went in and got the Directory of the Turf. Had always been my Bible. I would buy it every year and use it to find trainers to write to and so on and so forth. And I went in and got the Directory of the Turf, right at the front, the Jockey Club, phoned the Jockey Club, and I can almost remember to this day the sort of accent of the girl saying, "Hello, the Jockey Club," and me saying, "Can you send me the application forms for a trainer's license?" I just wanted to get the application forms and see what's involved. And she put me through to the licensing department, and I got Kevin Dwyer, secretary to the licensing committee. And he said to me, "What experience have you got?" And I said, "I'm a vet in practice." And he said, "Just because you're a vet doesn't mean to say you can train a horse." And, you know, it was totally out of the blue. I didn't expect anybody to be interviewing me on the phone. And it was a red rag to a bull. You know, I immediately thought, just because you're an ex-jockey doesn't mean to say you can train a horse either, or just because you're an assistant trainer or went to Eton doesn't mean to say you can train a horse either. So maybe he did me a favour, because it showed us it wasn't going to be plain sailing to get the licence.
Terrified, weren't we? Terrified. We had no money. We had to borrow the money for the deposit off my parents. You know, and I thought, oh great, I'll be able to work with horses. And they said, no, you won't, because we need your salary. So I had to look for a supply job to start teaching as soon as we got up there after Christmas, because we needed the money. So, but on the other hand, having horses outside the door and actually getting started, that was brilliant. Couldn't wait.
Well, I was probably one of the principal people to dissuade him, or try to dissuade him, for becoming a trainer, because he'd got a very good career there as a vet and was clearly good at the job. However, he insisted that he didn't want to be a vet, he wanted to train horses, and any help I could give him would be much appreciated.
His training facilities weren't that great in those days, because training on the beach, I didn't think, although it sounds good, we train our horses on the beach. It wasn't the best place to train horses. You had to wait for the RAF to disappear from their bombing runs before you could let the horses go down.
You couldn't really imagine anywhere less suited to training racehorses. It was a bit of a shambles. He'd got all his relatives and all Deirdre's family helping to build these stables and get them right. There were no gallops, only the sand, which at certain times of the tide was obviously impassable. You just would not believe it. People would not believe it. But that's where he started. And I told him he would never ever train flat horses.
But I always remember being at Carlisle that day, and in Carlisle, the grandstand where the owners can go leans over the course a little bit. So, it protrudes over the track. And I can remember Bobby Elliott going past, and I shouted, "Come on, Bobby," very, very loudly, and certainly in a way that was not normal that owners would stand there and shout. It was more like at a football match than at a race.
That kept us going for months, didn't it?
One winner. We were
Kept
happy. For the whole of the first year, we thought, this is, that's it, success. And here we are, we haven't had a winner now for 2 days and 2 runners, and suddenly it feels like,
a long time.
I didn't know at that time that he would become the guy who trained more racehorses than anybody else ever in the UK. But I realised that as a business he would make it. I wasn't certain that he would make it where he was with a few racehorses, but his dedication and single-mindedness to that always made me realise that he would be successful.
He liked to come down quite a lot.
Yep.
And he didn't like Lincolnshire. He wanted us to be closer. He talked about us going to Scotland and him buying a yard and me becoming a private trainer, and I wouldn't do that. And anyway, we thrashed out what was going to be the right deal, and it was the right deal. We made some appointments to come and look at yards, and this was probably the first one we came to look at.
Went to Hambleton, didn't we?
Went to Hambleton, Bill Pearce, and then we went to a farm near York, and then we went and met in the Trust House Forte Hotel opposite the racecourse in York to discuss what we'd seen. And all the way there we were saying, they won't like that yard in Midland, but that's the place.
We love it. That's where we
I
want to
wouldn't
be.
say we loved it. I don't know I loved it, but I remember saying there's a tap, there's stables, there's gallops. You can train horses from there.
Straight away.
Well, in spite of everything, I mean, short of money, with a place like Kingsley House, I mean, it's a fairly big stone establishment. Lovely now, but the thought of spending the money that he would have to spend just frightened the life out of me. And boxes as well. The boxes were in pretty poor condition, and he was immediately spending a lot of money. He bought new doors for the whole lot, if I remember rightly, because, basically to keep the horses in.
It wasn't run down as far as this building, the house was falling down, but the yard wasn't good, and there were no swimming pools or horse walkers or anything like that. But there was grounds here that we could build on, and we knew we could make it look a nice operation. And that's where we started.
We thought if we get to 57 paying horses, we might actually start to make a profit. And so we had horses waiting to go in, didn't we? And we got Richard Wheeler in, and the bank manager said, "Don't worry, I'll agree the loan. The loan will be no problem. I'll speak to head office for you." So we had Richard start the boxes, and they were a third built.
They were up to wall plate level. They were there's no roofs on them.
And then Barry Whitfield phones us and said, "Oh, I'm really sorry, head office haven't agreed the loan." And we were like, we haven't got any money to pay for them. And in the midst of this, we got our accounts done and we had a £15,000 VAT bill. And we just didn't know what we were going to do. We didn't have the money. And so I was saying to my dad, what am I going to do? And Dad says, look, I've got an insurance policy just matured. I've got 30,000. It's just come to, and I said, I'm saying, Dad, you've worked your whole life. We can't take your money. You know, it's just not fair. No. He said, you'll pay me back. He had every faith, didn't he?
He was driven, and you wouldn't meet many people who would succeed in the face of so much adversity. You know, this guy was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Middleham, when he started, was down to a few horses. You know, it had been the place, blah, 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 in the north. But it wasn't anymore. He put it single-handedly. He put it back on the map.
Mr. Bailey's Guineas was just a fantastic experience, and so many owners there supporting Paul.
See, bear in mind, I'd asked Frankie to ride the horse as he'd won the Royal Lodge, and he said no. So fair enough, and I got quite stroppy about this, and I said, well, we'll put Jason on. Now, Jason was in his first year out of his apprenticeship, really.
He went to Ripon for a racecourse gallop, Mr. Bailey's, and it was nothing short of spectacular. Get to the furlong and a half down at Ripon, ask him to go, and he just absolutely exploded, you know, and I came back with a grin from ear to ear, and it didn't matter what price he was or where he was trained. We knew that we were coming down to Newmarket, and he had a big chance.
Brian was great. He knew what a big day it was, and he ordered a Harrods picnic, didn't he? Because we were a bit outsiders in Newmarket, and we didn't have anything organised. We didn't know whether you organise lunch or what you do or anything. So Brian says, I'll organise a picnic and we'll have it in the car park. So we sat in the National Trainers Federation car park in Newmarket, and fortunately it was a lovely day.
We're the only people ever to have had a picnic in the car park at Newmarket.
The trainers at Newmarket were arriving, and of course they would have lunch at home before they left or whatever, and they were looking at us as if we're absolutely mad. Who are these upstarts coming down from the north?
It's not like a nice grass car
gravel
park
thing.
like at Asker or something. It's a little gravel car
And
park
people
behind
don't
a
really
wooden
have
fence.
picnics in it at all, do
No.
they? Yeah. But it was really good, and then we went. We were just all enthusiastic. We were quite bullish, really, weren't we? Because we worked really well and he galloped really well on the race courses. And
We thought he would win. We thought, 16 to 1, but we thought he would win.
Thousands and thousands of jockeys, and probably many of them better than me, never get to win a classic. So from a selfish point of view, it was absolutely tremendous. But for the Johnston point of view, the wheels had really started to turn. Everything had just started to really roll along then.
I always remember Mark afterwards. Never forget. The horse had won. Whoever was sponsoring the race came along and wanted Mark to go up to the box. And I think Mark's opinion was we weren't invited up to the box before, so not so sure as we should go now. So they said, yes, please come up, etc. And Mark said, okay, everybody, we have to go up to the box. And they said to him, just you, Mark, just you. Oh, he said, I'm not coming then. So it was quite funny. After the race, everybody wanted to know, but before the race, nobody wanted to know. So it was a very special day to see Mr. Bailey's winning.
These were very special times. You had, very special horses growing up in the yard at the same sort of time. You just cannot believe the success. You'd have to pinch yourself. Because at the time, you have a confidence in the horse, just like Paul had with Mr. Bailey's. But you can't really believe you're going to win every time. And he won 14 races, 12 of them group races. He was actually Mark's first Royal Ascot winner when he won the Gold Cup.
His cup was overflowing as far as stamina was concerned, and he wasn't slow either. He was a superstar. You've got a statue of him at Doncaster. There's the double trigger bar at Doncaster. What a wonderful, wonderful horse.
Honestly, it is unbelievable. People come up to me at every racecourse I go to, ask about Trigger, remind me about particular races, and it happens all the time, whether I go jumps racing or flat racing. And you can't quite believe how popular and well known he was, you know.
But in '94, we were full. So we must have had 79 horses or something like that. And I suppose that's quite amazing. You think, by most people's standards, we had 100 winners and £1 million prize money and a classic winner, and we had 79 horses. So we were striking really at almost 1.5 wins per box. So we knew it was another launching pad, and we knew we might have to consider moving. We'd approached Patrick Haslam a couple of times asking would he rent them, and he said no, he would rent us his wooden boxes at the back of Warwick House. And we said it's not practical, we can't go through your yard to get to our horses. He phoned me at the end of '94 and he said, I'll rent you that front yard now. And I said to him, it wouldn't solve the problem, Patrick. You wouldn't sell the lot, would you? And he said, yeah, I would. And, you know, that was the turning point.
I feel a part of it. From day one since I come, the open arms. Yes, we're Johnston Racing, but we wouldn't be Johnston Racing if it wasn't for everyone in the whole team.
Yeah, everybody works as a team, and that's how you get your target. Your targets are set, and you get in your winners every year, and all these add up to what we've achieved now.
Success, big time.
The racing school were also trying to look at new avenues at the time, and so we engaged Rory MacDonald to do a staff training programme for us. He was very good, and one of the things was they said you needed a logo, which we thought was a bit naff at the time. But I landed on it one day at Hamilton Races, and what a good logo it was. Still is. The best.
Simple. Absolutely. Always trying. We're always trying. You're always trying. We're always trying. But some people might say, well, I wasn't trying. With the Mark Johnson horses, they're always trying.
Well, I laughed when he came back because he's always saying, I'm sick of these people. Are the horses trying? And I had to say to them, they're always trying. And that was it. That's how it came about, didn't it? So, but no, I think it's great. It's great. And also we apply it right down that if every member of staff is always trying their best at whatever they're doing, it has to help make the business have more winners. And they can take pride in that.
I love seeing horse boxes driving about up and down or at the races, and they say things like, where horses come first or something, right? Well, when we started, the only people who called their businesses or their companies racing were bookmakers. Horse trainers weren't called racing, and nobody had a logo. Now there's loads of them. They're all called something racing, and they've all got a logo. We started that. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and there's so many things we do that people now have copied, and I just think that's great. Well, it must have been nearing 200 horses then.
Yeah.
Must have been nearing 200 horses. Because we had these 2 yards full, so there was just under 140 down here. And then we built Park Farm. Well, the first barn we built at Park Farm was 39. So yeah, there must have been close to 200 horses at that point.
did
And
make
that
a
was-
massive difference to us.
That was the straw that was breaking the camel's back, yeah. Change was that I said, I'm not doing it anymore. I don't mean the list, I mean training horses.
It would be very easy to take it for granted, and I think for a long time I did. They've made it look very easy. When I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock on a school night, I didn't appreciate that Dad was downstairs on his computer until 2 o'clock in the morning and then getting up at 6. And he did that for 7 days a week, for months and months of the year on end. And they never switch off. I've never seen them drop the ball. For all my years of kind of sitting back and listening to the conversations from just one end of the phone and hearing what they're saying, I've never known the ball to drop. Ultimately, if there's a problem, they need to be contactable and the work needs to get done. So there's been a lot of sacrifice.
This guy, Ian Harland, who had done the buyout of Brian Palmer for us, I phoned him at the end of 2004 and said, you got me into it, now get me out of it.
Well, every business has tough times.
Yeah, I mean, I think financially, the investment you've got to make to change it from a 40-horse yard up to a 240-horse several yards is huge. And there is enormous financial risk involved in that, as well as the actually managing all the people who work for you, plus the recruitment stuff.
When we met with them, I'd said the worst thing about my job was doing the list. And Deirdre said the worst thing about her job was me doing the list. So we knew I had to go.
The problem was, when he had 30, 40 horses, it wasn't difficult to do the list, so the riders need to know what they're working on in the next morning. So when he got to 80, it was commensurately more difficult. When we got into the real high numbers, then it was driving him crazy.
That's where the McDonald's story comes in that I tell everybody, because I said to him, I can't delegate. He said, if you go to McDonald's in Catterick or in New York or in London, are they wildly different or are they all the same? I said, they're all the same. And he said, yeah. He said, that's because the systems are so good that they can't get it wrong. And it was like a breath of fresh air. It was a new lease of life, a new target, devised the systems.
Invented those people to go racing, those people to ride, those people to muck out, those people to work in the office. Why on earth did nobody else invent that? It seems so simple now, and it runs so smoothly. And when you've got runners at 5 different meetings, which he has more often than not, it works, because that's the traveling team, that's the mucking out team, and everything works. He invented that, way ahead of his time.
Bearing all that in mind, the biggest surprise to me is that Mark still has the same determination to grow the business and to win. Where it comes from, I don't know, because I've just retired and I'm delighted to have stopped. It's very pleasant.
Phenomenal thing has just been the consistency over such a long period of time. To now have had 100 winners a year for 25 years in a row. That's another record in itself that someone will probably never ever break. It's one thing to have good patches and bad patches, but to maintain that level of consistency for such a length of time is it's an integral part of it all for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we used to think that when we were just having 100 winners, that was our target every year, and now we think we're disappointed if we don't get 200. And I think that has all stemmed from your dad always saying that if we have the right systems in place, we can train 300, we could train 400, as long as we have them systems that we set up over the years. And it's given us that ability to, although we train more horses, we don't drop our standards, and we just employ more people and keep the teams to a reasonable level. And that's something that has all changed since I've been here, and obviously was for the better, because the results prove it.
Yeah, much better. Much better. We can at least go out for dinner now and sit with our friends and stay there, and Mark not have to either leave early or come back, poor guy, after 11 o'clock, and then go out there for 2 or 3 hours and do the list and be exhausted the next day. So yeah, it's made a big difference to us.
So Kevin, you had a lot of big winners out of here. Which would be your highlights of?
It's got to be the filly attraction. She was just unreal. Probably the best day with her. I know that she won an English Guineas and Irish Guineas, but I think the pressure was on at Ascot in the coronation.
Aye.
First time round the turn, there was a little bit of pressure on, but she wore her heart on her sleeve. You couldn't do anything different on her.
I wasn't here when Mr. Bailey's won, but I was here when Attraction was here, and having Attraction winning a classic and all our Royal Ascot winners and Glorious Goodwood winners, it makes you hungry for more, doesn't it? It makes you hungry for more.
It'll probably never be done again either, will it?
If you'd asked me for one, I would also have said Attractions Guineas.
The best thing was we got up
Oh no,
and
we got up and walked
the course.
Yeah, we got up and walked the course. So Charlie was, what age was Charlie in 2004? 14 years ago, 13. But we met about the furlong pole, or half furlong pole, and we stood there, and Charlie described to everybody how the race would go, where the others would be, and what the distances would be between them at the finish, and he was just about spot on. So I think that was the greatest day. And it was a great year because it was probably the first time Angus had shown any liking for racing at all, and then later the same year, he, 9 years old, took his girlfriend to a day out at the races, and showing off, went and led Shamardal then after it won the Dewhurst.
Thank God that none of the actual owners were there, because it would have been extremely embarrassing if a small child walked up trying to lead one of their horses in and they'd expect to lead it in themselves. That's the excitement I think we all get from horse racing. It's infectious. The big winners are really easy to enjoy, but every winner's exciting. It's when everyone in the office is screaming on a horse on the TV at a little track in the north on a Tuesday afternoon.
Shamardal, he was a great horse to ride as well.
Proper horse show. His forte was his tactical speed, and in the Dewhurst literally just bounced him out, slotted him on the rail and just threw the reins at him, let him do his own thing. And you know, like we've said about Mark's horses, when it comes to the nitty gritty, you know that they're going to find. So what about big days for you, Joe? There must have been a few.
Yeah, I've had plenty of Group 2s, Group 3s from, but I suppose Group 1 2 years ago would have been the biggest on the last line, so that would have been my biggest win, yeah.
You know, there is that old saying, behind every top man there's a top woman. And we're not allowed to say that anymore, are we? Because I suppose it's sort of sexist. I don't consider it that way. But she wasn't behind. She was upsides. There were always upsides. I interview her as much as the kids, as Mark, and I found her so helpful and so good. But by Jove, she's there for him, he's there for her, and they make the best double act in sport.
Somebody asked me the other day why it's Mark Johnston and not Mark and Deirdre Johnston, and I wasn't quite sure of the answer. I don't know why, because it's certainly a team effort, and while Dad's name is on the door, it has always been a partnership. And when Dad gets an idea, I think it's amazing that he's got such a reliable sounding board for that. They've got two minds very much in sync, keeping each other straight, and I think that is how you go from on the beach in Lincolnshire with a handful of horses to 250. It's them constantly challenging each other to be better, and they've got the teamwork right, and I think that will come further now that Charlie's getting involved and he is another sounding board for ideas on how to improve the yards, improve the success of every individual horse. They've now got three brains to the task, and I think that's really exciting, because you just wonder, we've set the record already, but where do you go from here? Now you've got three minds working to the same goal.
I do think the numbers matter a lot. I think winning races matter a lot. Anybody who says that winning races doesn't matter is kidding themselves. If you ask all the owners, would you rather win and get £2,000 or come second and get 4? They'll all say, I'd rather come second and get 4. It's not true. It is not true. They wouldn't be racing in Britain if it was the prize money that mattered to them. They're racing in Britain because winning is what matters to them. Winning matters. That's what it's all about. That's what sport's all about. Sport's not about coming second. You know, no matter what they want to, you know, non-competitive sport in primary schools and everything, it's nonsense. Sport's about trying to win. And so winning more than anybody else is something, of course, I'm very proud of.
To do something that no one else has ever actually done is quite special. But I think the whole, you know, the team around us, it's a phenomenal job for all these years, the people that have supported us and helped us and worked with us, and I hope they all take pride in it as well, because it is a huge achievement from everybody.
It was during the terrible cold spell this winter, and all the drinkers were frozen, and Spider was on the 6 p.m. till midnight shift, and at 7 in the morning he was still working from midnight the night before. The only tap he could find that wasn't frozen was in the staff accommodation in Warwick House, and he was carrying buckets from the sink in Warwick House to water all the horses, and he'd been doing it for 7 hours. You know, and that's just beyond the call of duty. You know, we've mentioned individuals, and that's, you know, it's a shame really, because there's 125 of them,
and riding in all weathers.
Yeah.
You know, this winter, you know, I missed a bit of it because of my ankle, but I mean, watching them day after day, being absolutely soaked through, and they still come in and get on the horses, and that's why we've got winners. Yeah, we're going to keep going for a bit longer, so it'll be pretty tough for someone else to catch it.
Yeah, I have said, and I'm now realising it's not that realistic, but I have said that I'd like to get to a point where we've set the bar very high, and there's nobody else currently training that can beat it except Charlie Johnston.
The thing that hits me most is just the scale of what they've built. When you look at that video of that rundown yard in Lincolnshire and the horses going out on the beach, you struggle to comprehend that you could take that from there. We almost take it for granted now. You know, you turn in every morning to, you know, one of, if not the best, you know, training establishments in the world now, and for that to have come from where it began, you know, that takes a level of drive and determination that very few people are blessed with.
I keep trying to make it clear that it doesn't matter whether it was the 1,000th winner or the 4,000th winner or the 4,194th winner, you're immediately looking to win the next race.